Zettel für die lange Weg. 2 Flaschen Whisky für die Zeit. Und ich date gern habe, du bist dabei. Maria geht, fahrt mal weg, ist weit. Wann ich geh, ich werd dir fehlen, wann ich geh. Du sehst nicht, was ich mach, du sehst nicht, wie ich lach. Ich werd dir fehlen, du watsch sehen. Hab kriegt mein Zettel für den langen Weg. Du scheinst da, als mir finden kann. Es hat Maria und Dale ganz wunderbar. Als ich dir den weiße dann, wann ich geh, ich werd dir fehlen, wann ich geh. Du sehst nicht, was ich mach, du sehst nicht, wie ich lach. Ich werd dir fehlen, du watsch sehen. Well, good Ovid, leave a light, as we say in Pennsylvania Dutch. Good evening, dear people. We are back. It is another month that has come round again. We are now in the middle of July, and a brand new episode of PA Dutch Live is coming at you. I'm so glad to be with you, and I'm so glad that you have chosen to spend some time with me right here on the YouTube channel. You know the drill. Wherever you're calling in from or watching or whatever, throw it in that comment section, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, and let me know who's out there and where you are located. I'm watching the chat, and as soon as I see some people fly up there, I'll give them some personal shout outs, as I do every month. And we got somebody already. It's our dear friend who joins us every month, Carol, my long distance cousin. Hello from beautiful downtown Rarisburg tonight. She's usually in Burnville, but she's in the big town of Rarisburg tonight at Altalaha for a meeting at 6:30. Well, I'm glad you're able to join us, Carol. There in beautiful Western Berks County, we got James joining us from Higgins, Pennsylvania, up there in Schuylkill County. That's Pennsylvania Dutch country as well. We have our friend who joins us every month, Norman Jung, staying up there, staying awake pretty late there in Germany. Mund und Pennsylvania Dutch Live. Was willst du mehr? What more could you ask for? Gute Maria aus Steinbach am Glan, Germany. Norman, thanks so much for joining us. We got Sampler 19 joining us. Moin Moin from Hamburg. Now, he's either coming in from Hamburg, Germany or Hamburg, Pennsylvania. But since he said Moin, I think it's Hamburg, Germany. But Hamburg, Pennsylvania is okay, too. I spent a lot of time there. I've been to Hamburg, Germany, too. Dolly, our good friend, is joining us again from Fleetwood, Pennsylvania, there in beautiful Berks County. In fact, I ran into Dolly at the Folk Festival. We'll talk more about that here in a minute. And it was nice to finally talk with her and meet with her. Our good friend Jeff Marks is joining us as well. He's already got a question for our guest for the month. Wie bist, Mr. Lynn Otto? Well, we'll get to Mr. Lynn Otto here in a moment. And Jeff will be joining us as the special guest in the fall. I'll tell you more about that later. Patricia is joining us from Speyer, the big city of Speyer there in the Palatinate, in the region where our family comes from. So wonderful for you to join us. Patricia staying up late as well. Our good friend Brigitte is also joining us. She joins us every month from Philadelphia. It's so good to have you here. My dear friend Joyce Hassler is joining us from Stone Ridge and Myerstown on this beautiful summer evening. It is a really beautiful summer evening. And as soon as this show's over, I'm going to go sit on the back porch a little bit and enjoy this summer evening. But for now, I'm definitely going to be staying right here with you guys. Joining us all the way from Brazil, Mauricio, is joining us. Greetings from the south down there in Brazil. I'll bet you that he is from that part of Brazil where they also speak a very similar language to Pennsylvania Dutch. And Sean is joining us from Sinking Spring. Well, that's a beautiful part of Berks County as well. Well, if you guys join and you haven't put a message in yet, put it in and I'll eventually get to you. But I'm going to move on here real quick, as we always do in the month. Let me add my live updates here. We want to go over what's going on in Pennsylvania Dutch country. Got some news for you, and then we'll get to our guest. Yes, our guest tonight is Lynn Otto. We're going to go way back in time tonight for discussion about Conrad Weiser and that era of American history. And then, of course, I'll throw you something in Pennsylvania Dutch. We got a song, as we always do. But a couple things to announce while I'm with you. If you were in the greater Berks County area, the last 10 days was the Kutztown Folk Festival. And for my money, I was there pretty many days. It was well attended. I talked with some vendors and they said they had really good sales numbers. It was the first year that we were back live in person because of COVID in 2 years. So everyone was kind of a little worried, what was it going to be like? Were people going to show up? But people did. On the weekends, I thought it was really good crowds. I was there on the last day, Sunday, and that's always kind of hit or miss, but I thought this year was a great crowd. So if you missed the folk festival this year, it's okay. It's coming back next year. In fact, I'd like to share the dates with you. This is official. Next year, which will be the 73rd annual folk festival, Kutztown Folk Festival, will take place July 1st through the 9th. 2023. So put that on your calendars and try and find at least one day where you can get yourself to beautiful Kutztown, Berks County, Pennsylvania, and join the fun that is the Kutztown Folk Festival. Mark your calendars as well. I have some upcoming events for you. First one, this is not a shameless plug, but I'm going to plug it anyway. If you are in the greater Berks County area on Sunday, August the 7th, and you'd like to hear some decent music, my band, The Broken Spokes, that's Chris LaRose and I. Many of you that follow the YouTube channel know of us and the shtick that we do. We will be live at the North Heidelberg United Church of Christ, which is just north of Blue Marsh Lake there in Berks County. Come on by starting at 6 p.m. If the weather's nice, we'll be outside in the Grove. It's a really pretty setting. And if the weather's bad, then we'll be inside the church, which is really pretty as well. And at the set break, there's going to be ice cream, good Pennsylvania Dutch ice cream. So mark your calendars August 7th if you'd like to join us. It'll be a really fun night of Americana music, Pennsylvania Dutch music, folk music. But I have some other things to announce too. That same day, if you don't want to come hear us play, or you can come hear us play later in the evening, Sunday, August 7th is also Celebrate Kutztown Day. There's going to be a lot of Pennsylvania Dutch stuff going on there in Kutztown. Lots of entertainment. The Swing Fever Band, the Happy Dutchmen will be playing. Flaming Dick and the Hot Rods, the Marvelous Marv and the Shoe Throwers, and fireworks as well. Plus, there's a Quate tournament. Come on, any good Pennsylvania Dutch person out there is going to want to get involved in that. And there'll be food, I'm sure, and tons of good stuff, a cakewalk. So an opportunity for you to check out Kutztown on the 7th of August as well. Also, mark your calendars. The very next day, Monday, August the 8th, if you are in the Western PA or Western Berks County area, there in Wummelsdorf, the Tulpehocken Settlement Historical Society will be welcoming our good friend Keith Brinsenhoff, who will be performing as his Pennsylvania Dutch pen name, I guess we could say, Dr. Witzelzug. He'll be doing a show of Pennsylvania Dutch comedy and music. If you've never seen Mr. Brinsenhoff perform, you are missing out. So if you can, make the trek over there to Wummelsdorf on the 8th of August at 7:30 p.m. You will not be disappointed. Later on in the month of August, on the 12th and 13th, is the Goshenhoppen Historians 54th Annual Folk Festival. That will be taking place, as I said, Friday and Saturday, August 12th and the 13th, at the Henry Andis Plantation there in Perkiomenville, which is down there in beautiful Montgomery County. Friday 12 to 8, Saturday 10 to 6. There will be tons of information and tons of good stuff going on, and you can learn more by visiting their website, www.goshenhoppen.org. At some point in the future, I'd love to get someone from their organization as a guest on the show to tell the story of the Goshenhoppens. I'm working on it, but we'll get there. But that's an opportunity for you as well to connect with Pennsylvania Dutch themed stuff on the 12th and 13th. Well, I guess it's time to bring our guest in because that's all the announcements I have. Our guest tonight is Mr. Lynn Otto, and I'm not going to tell you too much about him. I'm going to let him talk a little bit about himself. But if we look at the images here I have on the slide, which one do you think is him? I think you could probably guess, but he is an expert in this era of history that we're going to be talking about tonight: colonial America, French and Indian War, and more particularly our man of the hour, Mr. Conrad Weiser. But real quick, before I bring him in, a couple people joined us and said, hey, Carol's joining us from beautiful Bartow, Pennsylvania. Hi, Carol. Mo, I ran into Mo at the Kutztown Folk Festival as well. Good to meet you finally. And he's joining us as he usually does every month. And Gis Kessler, Gute Dog from Jefferson County. First time live viewer. I'm so glad that you're joining us from way out there in Western Pennsylvania. Jefferson County is where Punxsutawney is. Am I correct, or do I have that? I think that's correct. So welcome to the show. I'm glad you joined us. All right, enough with that. Let's bring Mr. Otto into the live stream. Hello, Lynn. Welcome to PA Dutch Live.
Hey, Doug. Good to see you.
So I'd like to start. I usually start with all my guests to kind of let the audience learn a little bit about you. What is your Pennsylvania Dutch connection?
Well, I'm from Schuylkill County. I was raised in a little, as I call, sleepy hamlet in the sub. We have about maybe 100 people now there. Um, Graduated from Tri-Valley High School, went to college, but uh, my heritage, I guess you would say, obviously comes from my parents. Um, Both of them spoke the dialect very, very, very much. So that my maternal grandmother and grandfather, and almost all my aunts and uncles talked. And so my brother and I we were around it all the time. Unfortunately, I don't have the melodious rhythm to it like you do, and you and Chris.
Well, don't let that stop you from at least trying to learn it and get to that melodious level that we're at. Well, Lynn, let me ask you before we get into like the nuts and bolts here, why are you or what got you so interested in this particular era of history?
Well, before that, let me say that probably my interest in history comes from my dad. And once I graduated from college, I sort of wanted to try out the reenactment field. And I had given some thought about Civil War, but it just seemed like there were so many Civil War soldiers that I decided to give it a try in the Revolutionary War. And I did that for a few years. And then I was in a muzzle loading gun shop and I saw this little business. So I called the guy and talked to him, and started my journey into French and Indian War reenacting. Um, but in the 1980s, I can't give you an exact date. I found out about the Conrad Weiser homestead. I attended as a spectator a few reenactments that they had, and I just fell in love with the place. And in 1999, I was asked to be on the board, and I've sort of been there ever since.
Well, that sounds good. We're going to talk a lot about the actual homestead because you know so much about it, being involved in it. But I thought we'd start with this real quick. I put this a little bit of facts together just in case anybody out there has no idea who Conrad Weiser was. Just some quick bullet point facts here. And Lynn, please, add to this, but born November 2nd, 1696 in Herrenberg, which is in modern day Baden-Württemberg, for those of you that know Germany, as it is today in southwestern Germany. And then eventually he immigrated with his parents originally to the Mohawk Valley of New York in the early 1700s. There was a large percentage of Palatines and people from that part of Germany that moved to the Mohawk Valley, the Squahari Valley, and then eventually would move down. He spent some time there. And this is, Lynn, what can you tell us about the time that he spent and this early part of his life where he comes into contact with Native Americans?
Okay, just to throw something else about that early part of his life. In 1709, his mother passed away, either pregnant with her 15th or her 16th. And that's when Conrad's father decided that perhaps they were going to take up an offer from Queen Anne and move to the New World. So in 1710, they set out and accomplished their mission. However, something that really happened in Weiser's life was right after they moved to and settled in New York. Conrad's father remarried, and that for the children was not a match made in heaven. A lot of things went on, and Conrad himself says uh, the family has scattered because of the stepmother. So Interestingly enough, when Conrad went to live with the Mohawk, there's a bit of controversy as to why that happened. One thought is that perhaps because there was basically a almost like a famine going on at the time they were in New York, and one thought was that perhaps feed the boy, and the other train of thought is that perhaps stepmother said, I don't want him in the house. So which of them is really the basic fact? I don't know. But from that, he spent time with the Mohawk. Again, he did not find that experience pleasant. He writes his about his time there that a lot of time in the village that he was staying, they were staying in bark longhouses. That in the evening when the entertainment started, he would head for a longhouse and bury himself under the skins and blankets so that anybody that would come in could not find him. So at that point in time, he thought, oh my God, why did they put me through this? So anyway, he made it through. He came out in I think it was 1720-ish. He met a woman, Anna Eve Fegg or Feck, and they got married. And by the time they came down into Pennsylvania, they already had 4 kids. Little did he know that that experience that he had living with the Mohawk was big dividends down the road.
Yeah, can we talk about that? So the family, he and his wife and children eventually moved down into what it's today Western Berks County there in around the town of Wummelsdorf. And we'll take a look at a picture of his house and here in a little bit. But so when he moves down there, how soon after that was someone from the government coming and like knocking on his door? Or how did that come about?
Well, in 1729, when they finally came down into the area, we don't think that the house that you're about to show was the first house. He talks about his journals that he's going to pay somebody to come and tear down his old log cabin. So we think that they were probably living in a log cabin first, and then built the stone house. So in 1731, he was his good friend Chicella. They had not met at this time. Was on the road to Philadelphia for a Indian conference, and the powers to be suddenly realized that they had nobody to natives were talking about. So somebody said, "There's a guy up in Heidelberg that can do this." So they invited him to come and interpret, and basically became his claim to fame as an Indian interpreter. And from that point on, his relationship with Chicella was one that was really, really solid. I sometimes compare that relationship to the Lewis and Clark expedition, where Lewis and Clark seemingly worked hand in hand very well, and so did Conrad and Chicella. It wasn't until Chicella's death in 1748 when that relationship ended.
I mean, for those of us that don't know, I mean, for the most part, in the very early history of Pennsylvania, at least colonial Pennsylvania, especially when William Penn was still around, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, we tried to have as much of a peaceful coexistence with the Native Americans as possible. Correct? Am I correct in that history?
You're correct. Oddly enough, in Pennsylvania, from the time that William Penn came until the early 1750s, there was about 70 to 75 years of almost perfect peace and harmony in Pennsylvania. Glitches, but for the most part, it was working out well. And then that all changed when the French started moving down from Canada into what we today call Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So Weiser, I mean, Weiser was called into service more than once on behalf of the colonial Pennsylvania government, correct? Did he like actually was he used in brokering treaties or just purely as an interpreter? I mean, was he a political person or was he purely just a linguist, so to speak?
Well, yes and no. His his job title said Indian interpreter, but I believe that there was some of his feelings that he went into his work, and from early on until Chickellami's death, um, I think he was really mindful of the needs of the natives. Um, However, everybody has a boss, and the Pennsylvania Assembly was Weiser's boss, and they were uh, responsible for the Indian policies that were being developed. So he might not have agreed with everything, but as I said, I do believe that his heart was for the best.
So was it often, I mean, from the records that exist, were there often times where native leaders would come to visit Conrad at his home, or was it more that Conrad was going out to visit the Native Americans?
Well, there was one specific time that he writes about um, that a native delegation was coming down to go to Philadelphia from the Indian town of Shamokin, today Sunbury, Pennsylvania. And in his yard, his property, were over 200 Indians camped out.
It's crazy. They used him as like
And
a
Mrs. Weiser
hotel
had of them.
a hotel stop on the way to Philadelphia, I guess, or something, huh?
Yeah, and the natives, or I'm sorry, the neighbors were up in arms because the natives were taking all the fence posts down and using them for firewood. Now that was just one instance. Most of the time, he was traveling up what we today call the Topahawken Path to Shamokin, and then on to Onondaga, which is present day Syracuse, New York. And he did those trips at least about 10 to 12 times during his life. So that was probably his go-to as far as attending the meetings and so forth.
And just so we have the right terminology, we know that he spent some time with the Mohawks, but when we talk about the natives that he's dealing with here in Pennsylvania, what are the majority of them as far as like a tribe? Who were they, the Lenape or the Susquehannocks, or like when you talk about Chief? And I was going to ask you about this. You pronounce so. I've always heard it said as Shikellamy, but you pronounce it as how do you say it again?
Shikellamy.
So that's you're the expert. So that's I'm gonna
No,
have to
no, no. I'm
bend.
far from an expert.
I'm gonna have to bend my mind on that one because I've always heard it called chicken. But anyway, he was a chief, I would imagine, or someone that was of importance. What tribe were the majority of those Indians, Native Americans that Conrad was interacting with?
The Okay, the big the big organization at that time was the Iroquois Confederation. That was made up of six tribes, Mohawk being one of them. Um, they were by far the largest organization, native organization, pretty much on the East Coast. Um, then you had a mixing of the Delaware, the Lenni and Lenape, Mingo, Cherokee, Shawnee, and Shikellamy of the Indian village at Shamokin, and he had a mixture of of all kinds of natives there. And what he did was he negotiated, and he just he kept everybody on the same path. But I want to say this that uh, anytime there was a decision made by the Pennsylvania Assembly as to whether to benefit the Delaware and the Shawnee or Cherokee, or benefit the Iroquois. The Iroquois won out because of them being the biggest ally.
Okay. So Weiser service, we talked about that a little bit. And then I was putting this slide together and I thought, what are the chances Conrad Weiser dies on the 13th of July today? Like today's the anniversary in 1760 at the age of 63. I was like, what? That must have been fate, I guess. What,
Yeah.
I mean, 63. So it's, you mentioned a lot of times from his writings. So do a lot of his personal diaries and journals still exist?
Yes. One of the things that us people in the 21st century and the 20th century, he kept immaculate journals and account books. And he conversed and wrote letters. I can't even tell you how many letters he wrote. So there is a vast number of artifacts as far as account books and letters that he was writing to almost everybody.
And all that's survived. That's wonderful. That is really wonderful.
Most of that has survived. Yes.
Yeah. Well, let's take a tour a little bit of his property, and we can talk about this. Lynn sent me a bunch of photos to share with you guys. So I'm just gonna let you talk. You just tell me when to advance the slide, Lynn, and I'll do so.
Sure. The picture on the left is what we call the actual Weiser House, and the picture on the right shows the spring house to the right, and then the large stone building in the center. When visitors come or we get phone calls, most of the time people think that the Weiser House is the large stone house in the middle. Actually, it is not. After Weiser's death, family took over. At some point in time, the property went out of the Weiser name, and a man by the name, his last name is Sheets, bought the property, and the house in the center on the right was built in 1834. So that's actually a 19th century building, and it now serves as our visitor center. Now, when you come into our parking lot, if you come in and right before you turn into our parking lot, there's a nursery and there's a barn there. We also think that that barn was probably built at the same time as the Sheets house.
Okay. Okay. And so the house that we're looking at in the left-hand picture, that is the house that Conrad and his wife lived in during
Yeah.
toward the end of his.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
To the best of our knowledge, yes.
To the best of your knowledge. Okay.
So you can advance. So this is the Weiser house in early years.
My goodness.
It wasn't until the mid 1920s that people of the community started to get together and say, I wonder if something ought to be done to preserve this house of this involved in all these things. So the house on the picture on the house on the right, we don't know exactly the dates of them, but that's how it looked. And then in the early 1900s, I'm sorry, the house on the left, the picture on the right, supposedly a cyclone. What the difference is between a cyclone and a tornado, I don't know. Took the roof off, and then a fire was started somehow and basically gutted the building. So all that was really left was the outside stone structure. Now, prior to the cyclone coming, Mr. Sheets actually was using the Weiser house as a pig pen and a chicken coop.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So in the 1920s, a grassroots effort was started, and they decided that we're going to try to save this. And the prior picture, the one that we say today is the Weiser house, that is a result of their efforts. Next, please. So, when I say this grassroots effort, it truly monument that you're seeing on the left there is was originally uh, bought by the children, school kids of Wilmersdorf, saving their nickels, dimes, and pennies, and raised enough money to get this monument. Now, this monument originally stood in the front yard of the Wilmersdorf School, and then when the park was created, the Patriotic Order of Sons of America actually paid to have the monument brought to the park. So that's why we have it there today. And on the right-hand side, again, is another picture of the Sheets House, which we use as our visitor center. Next, please. So the only outbuilding that we have on the property anymore is the spring house. And again, thanks to Weiser and his meticulous notes, he says that at one point in time, the farm or the plantation in Heidelberg, at its biggest, was about 900 acres. And he writes that there were over 200 outbuildings on the property. The spring house is the only one that survives. It is a very unique, we call it a spring house because many people have called it that for years, but I think probably it's a better description of a summer kitchen. Hmm. It did have a spring inside, but it also has a fireplace. It also had a bake oven attached, and there was a second floor. Hmm. So I think it was more of a summer house than anything. And as you can see on the left there, there's a nice fire going. So we use a spring house in almost all of our living history programs. We're very fortunate to have. Okay. So, yes, Chicella. Chicella was an Oneida in the Oneida tribe. His origin has been discussed, and it could be that he was maybe born of French descent in Montreal and later captured. That's not clear. But what we know of Chicella after his meeting with Weiser, very, 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 very worried about his natives that were there, and he's particularly asked Weiser many times, please do not bring rum to Shamokin, because he knew what it did. Also, Chicella had to deal with a lot of Moravian missionaries coming through, and actually had some Moravians living at Shamokin, and actually one was a blacksmith who took care of making odd things at Shamokin. For the short time he was in the History's Eye, I think did a wonderful job. Next. Okay, and this is from my friend Jeffy Mart. He created this painting for us, and I just love it. I think it really gives you the feel of what all was going on at the Weiser house during the French and Indian War period when he was a colonel in the Pennsylvania Regiment. I just love it. I love the chickens, the horses, the pigs, the wagons. I think it brings out everything in my mind what 18th century Weiser homestead would have looked like. And finally, the Weiser grave. Oddly enough, this past Sunday, we had a remembrance ceremony for his anniversary of his death. And the picture on the left, we had anybody that wanted to from the public, and we had other people there that laid flowers, and we took all the flowers and 3 roses up and put it on his grave. The picture on the right shows you an earlier The cemetery at the homestead is sort of very interesting. Um, at one point in time, to the left of the tombstone, there was a small tombstone, which we thought is where Anna Eve laid. Unfortunately, that was proven wrong by some ground penetrating radar that they did in around 2000. And they found that where Anna Eve's tombstone is, there was no burial shaft. So who's also buried at the grave? Well, Weiser's is the only legible stone. We know that his one son was buried there. We know his father was buried there, and at least four infants. And legend has it that there were some Native Americans. We've never been able to substantiate that.
Okay. I just had a quick question thinking about, what do we know about Conrad Weiser in regards to, was he active in the Womelsdorf community? Was he an active member of a local church? Most of the Pennsylvania Dutch at this time period would have been, somehow involved in those types of things. Was Conrad Weiser that kind of guy too, or was he so busy doing all of this traveling and politicking and so forth? What was he like outside of his business, the professional aspect of his life?
Well, he wore many hats.
Okay.
He was responsible for helping lay out the town of Reading. He's very interested and helped in the founding of Berks County in 1752. He was a magistrate. He was a judge. He had a tavern on the property that was actually run by John Womelsdorf, and so many different occupations that they were doing there. His one son, Peter, operated a tannery there and made saddles. So yes, he was very involved in the area. Now, getting to his faith, he was a very staunch Lutheran for quite a while. And then something happened in the area. We call it today the Tulpehocken Confusion.
Okay. Tell us about that.
The Lutheran churches in town were operating, and Weiser faithfully attended it. When the Moravians started coming around and asking Weiser to take them on trips to Shamokin and Onondaga, they also sort of slipped into the area. So the one church started splitting the services between the Lutherans and the Moravians. And that sort of worked out for a while. And then one day, the Lutherans came to use the church, and there was a big lock on the door, and they didn't have the key. So interesting things took place. There were some Bible burnings and so forth. But basically, what happened was Weiser got very, what's the right word? Disillusioned with all that was going on. And one of his best friends was a Lutheran minister named Peter Miller. And Peter also got disillusioned. And both of them sort of traveled in the same direction and hooked up with Conrad Weiser at the cloister in Ephrata. And that started a very interesting journey for him and his family for about 6 years. The cloister is a celibate organization, and Weiser took his family there. And after about 2 months, Anna Eve said, "Nah, I don't think this is for me." So the family moved back, save one daughter who stayed at the cloister with Conrad. Unfortunately, she ended up passing away there. I think she was around 16 years old. But while he was at the cloister, he was still carrying out his Indian interpreter duties. And the cloister, when you were a male, you were to wear, and you were to take on a biblical name. And his biblical name was Brother Enoch. And things went pretty good, but you know, uh, people are supposed to obey rules. And Conrad, because his family left, started going home on weekends. And after a period of time, they had four more children. And Mr. Beisel probably didn't like that too much. And then eventually a schism happened. And about 1745, Conrad started seeing the light again and came back to his Lutheran heritage. However, there's one interesting thing that happened there. About the same time Conrad was contemplating coming back to the Lutheran Church, a man came in the area who was a traveling minister, Henry Muhlenberg. And Henry became interested in Conrad's second oldest daughter. And eventually, Conrad became his son in law, or his father in law, I should say. And I have a strong suspicion that his son in law had a lot to do with him coming back into the fold.
Yes, as a Muhlenberg, he would probably have some pretty good sway with the Lutheran faith. Yeah, someone had asked, Laura had asked here in the chat, that didn't he spend time or was friendly with Ephrata, and Lynn just told us about that. I want to have a guest on at some point in the future that deals specifically with the Ephrata cloister, because that is a fascinating story too, that
Absolutely.
a lot of people don't know about, and this whole from this same era of history. Yeah, so Weiser then gets tied, his descendants then get tied in with the Muhlenberg family, which is another, very important colonial era family in Pennsylvania, particularly, that would have national
Yes.
ramifications later on down the road. So it's really interesting. Let's talk about, you sent some more pictures here. I want to definitely get through those as well. So you had mentioned that there's a lot of events at the homestead. You want to talk about some of those, Lynn?
Sure. As everybody knows, when 2020 hit and the pandemic, the site shut down. Normally speaking, our schedule starts out with Charter Day, which is the second Sunday in March, and Charter Day is the organization that owns the property is the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission, and Charter Day is celebrated by the museum, and it's a free admission for everybody. And Charter Day is probably our biggest living history event. You can see in the left there how many participants we had, and on the right, just some scenes from it. It's a really, really, really good day. Next. So in June, we have something called the our Living History Craft Day. And we have anywhere from 25 to 35 different crafters who are doing 18th century things or talents or crafts. And that has become very popular. And we love it. And it brings, especially for kids, it prompts them to ask a lot of questions about, well, why are you doing it this way, or why does your tool look that way? So it's a great educational day. Next. So in conjunction with the craft day, we do something called forest diplomacy. Forest diplomacy, or some people call it the Woods Edge ceremony, is actually a very sacred and ancient Native American custom. And what happens is, if you're a European or you're Native, you go to either the Indian village or you go to the European settlement, and you come out of the darkness, you come out of the woods. And when you get there, you have this ceremony, and it's very meaningful because you're taking, symbolically, you're taking the thorns out of their feet, you're taking the dust out of their ears that they may hear, you dust their eyes so they may see clearly, and all this goes on. And this is a precursor to almost every conference or treaty that was done. And if this went well, the treaty generally went well. If this didn't go well, sometimes not. So we've been very honored with the Native Americans to be able to do this, and it's a really really neat thing.
It looks it.
Next,
Absolutely.
and then in July, around the 4th of July, we have our Patriotic Concert, free to the public, the new place. And for any veteran that comes and signs up, they get their name uh, called out at intermission, and they're all given flags. And the Ringgold Band at that point in time plays all the 5 service songs, and everybody raises. So it's a great, great, great time. So this the Saturday before Thanksgiving, we have our Candlelight Tours, and most of the time we have 5 different scenarios, and we pick a certain year um, in the homestead's history, and we have tours coming through. Most of the time, the presenters are doing first person, and it's just a great, great, great time at the homestead.
Jeff,
Next.
I'm sorry. Lynn, I'll tell you what, that was your last photo that you shared with me.
Yes.
I will put a link to the Conrad Weiser's Homestead's website so that people can learn more, because anytime you have these types of events coming up, I'm sure that you're posting about it so people can plan accordingly. So I'll definitely put a link to that in the show notes. And I know that there are a couple locations like this across the Commonwealth that at one point were part of like the state system, but now are funded mainly privately. And I think the Conrad Weiser Homestead goes into that fund where you guys are raising your own money for the upkeep and maintenance of the property.
The state still owns it, and they pay a portion of the utilities, and they also provide a state employee who's our groundskeeper.
But beyond that, any fundraising that's on the
But from
group to.
yeah, the Friends group raises the money to be able to be open and have the programming.
So definitely, and I know you guys also have a presence on social media, and I know that you guys post when you have stuff coming up. So anyone out there that's interested in visiting the Conrad Weiser Park, I highly recommend it. I was there when I was a young child, growing up in Berks County. I sadly haven't been back for a long time, but I am now itching to get back thanks to tonight's episode. And to learn more about Conrad Weiser, this guy was just, Lynn said he was a man of many hats, and he really, really was someone that I think we can look at, who was, one of the good guys in history. I think, trying to strike that balance between the Europeans and the Native Americans. And yeah, I have a lot of respect for the man, having read some of the stuff about him and learned some of the history. So I just wanted to thank you for coming on the show tonight and sharing your knowledge with us about Conrad Weiser. And definitely I'll have the links to your organization and the social media stuff in the show notes for anybody that wants to learn more.
All right, thank you, Doug. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So if you know off the top of your head, when is the next event that'll be taking place at the homestead?
That will probably be the Candlelight Tour.
Okay, so in the fall. So you guys have some time to plan
November.
your trip to downtown Wilmelsdorf, Pennsylvania, and go out. And there's a lot of stuff to do around that area too. So make a whole day of it, and visit the Conrad Weiser Homestead. Thank you so much, Lynn, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and you've got me excited. I'm sure we got some of the other viewers out there excited as well. So thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. Mock Scoot.
Mock Scoot. Well, leave a light. How about that? We got some people here saying some nice comments. Laura says, hey, we brought the family to Charter Day and had a great time. Loved the artists and the reenactors that were there. Dolly says, thank you, Lynn. So very interesting, informative. Praise to all involved in those restoration efforts. How about it? When you look at those pictures, the guy was using it as a pig stable. Hi, could you just us sitting here in 2022 just are shaking our heads crazy. Guy says, gross dengue to Mr. Mainfor, Mr. Otto for this presentation. Very interesting to me because my ancestor Johann Adam Walborn came to Pennsylvania with Conrad Weiser in 1710. Well, that's really great. Our good friend Chris also normally is with us. He says, hey, I'm late, friends. I'm interested in this time and place, and I have a legacy as a provincial lieutenant under Conrad Weiser. How about that? Sean says, thanks, Lynn, and I agree. Lynn said, I was here last over a cold and crispy winter day. Well, that's not today. That's probably I had 93 degrees at my house today. I don't know what you guys had where you guys are, but yeah, there's a lot to learn. We just scratched the surface tonight on the story that is Conrad Weiser. So there is stuff out there online. Do a little digging. There's books out there you could read. Stop at the homestead and get a firsthand tour by somebody that's there on one of those event days. I would, that forest ceremony, that would be really cool to see firsthand. So I would invite anybody out there to learn more and go out and check some stuff out. As is the case every month, I like to bring everybody something in the Pennsylvania Dutch language. It is the month of July, which for those of us that are Americans know that this is the birthday month of our country on the 4th of July. So I decided we're going to do something patriotic this month for our Pennsylvania Dutch language bit, and it is the Pledge of Allegiance in Pennsylvania Dutch. Now, of course, any American knows this. You said it in school, you know it, you have it memorized, but maybe you never said it in Pennsylvania Dutch. So I didn't put the English with it because we all know the English, right? So I'm going to read the Pennsylvania Dutch to you, and you can also find this on my website if you'd like to print it out sometime. So if you ever want to pledge the flag in Pennsylvania Dutch yourself, whenever. But here it is in Pennsylvania Dutch, the Pledge of Allegiance. Ich verspreche, getreu zu sein, zu dem Fahne von den Vereinigten Staaten von Amerika und des Land, für das es steht, ein Land, und Gott, ewig vereinigt, mit Freiheit und Gerechtigkeit für alle. So there you go. The Pledge of Allegiance in Pennsylvania Dutch. Now, our song this week, I'm going to share a video with you as soon as I share my screen here. I need to go to this and share. So, as I mentioned, this week was the Kutztown Folk Festival, and Chris and I, we performed a couple days at the festival on the main stage. We were lucky enough to have been invited. And one of the days, our good friend Dave Klein, who was kind of the MC of the main stage, recorded us performing one of our songs. So I want to share that with everybody tonight. This is the popular Pennsylvania Dutch folk song, Ich und Du, recorded live at the Kutztown Folk Festival. Enjoy. So this first song we want to do is a very traditional Pennsylvania Dutch folk song called Ich und Du. Translates into something like me and you, I and you. And it's a fun song. And if you know Pennsylvania Dutch, then sing along, please. And if not, then you could clap in Pennsylvania Dutch. It's a little different than English clapping, but it's pretty close. Show them Pennsylvania Dutch clap.
Do that the whole show.
Just do a little Pennsylvania Dutch accent, and it'll be fine. All right, here's Ich und Du. Yeah, game on. So kannst du, wenn wir dann miteinander singen, sing ich und du. Ich bin froh und ich bin heilig, so bist dann du. Ich geh wechseln auf die Heilig und so durch du. Oh, wir singen, sing ich und du. Oh, wir platschen dazu. Feeling would stay my family feel stand do. Get that Dr. Book and gal was get stand do. Rund zum ihrer doing that of that durch du. What exciting no in that also durch du. Oh, wir singen, sing ich und du. Oh, wir platschen dazu. Na, spiel mal. Du hast was ich selbst so durch du. Wann ich mich bin, flug ich schnell auf der Flucht much do. Ich hab so gut Gästerheit und so much do. Lebendiges Spaß und Herrlichkeit und so much do. Oh, wir singen, sing ich und du. Oh, wir klatschen denn zu noch einmal. Oh, wir singen, sing ich und du. Oh, wir klatschen denn zu. I love y'all. Well, I hope you enjoyed that live performance. Well, recorded live performance at the Kutztown Folk Festival. Our good friend Dave Klein put that up for us, and he recorded some other stuff that we did that week during the Folk Fest. So you can check some of those videos out on his YouTube channel. Just search Dave Klein, and you'll find it. There's some really good stuff on there. A couple other last things before we leave. We've been announcing for the last couple of months that we have this online merch store. Well, right now it is currently under maintenance, and it'll be back online here in probably 2 to 3 days. So if you went and clicked the link here recently and nothing showed up, we're just cleaning some things up, fixing some things, but it'll be back on. Give it a day or two, and then you'll be able to get some of your PA Dutch theme merch. We're going to have some new content coming out here into the fall, but I don't want to say too much about that. Just check out zazzle.com/PA Dutch stuff. But again, give it a day or two, and then hopefully everything will be back online and ready to roll. If you like what we do here on the channel, please, and you feel like you want to support us, your support is greatly appreciated. You can buy me a coffee. Remember, all money that is raised during our buy a coffee campaign program goes towards the upkeep of the channel, so that we can get new material, get new strings for the mandolin, and things like that. Nothing beyond that, just stuff that is right there for the YouTube channel. Check out buymeacoffee.com/Doug Maidenford, and you too can make a donation. And I am greatly thankful for any donation that is given. Mark your calendars. It's coming up. I already know when our next edition of PA Dutch Live is, and that will be August the 10th, 2022 at 6 p.m. It is a Wednesday, and the special guest is all of you. I did this last December. I think it was. We did a live viewer call-in show around Christmas time, and I enjoyed it. Had a couple people that joined the live stream. I'm going to give you that opportunity again if you'd like to. So in August, it'll be your opportunity to come on and talk about something Pennsylvania Dutch, or share a memory or something that you think is really cool about Pennsylvania Dutch, whether it's a language or culture, or you just want to get on and say, you know, Doug, last night I had the best Pennsylvania Dutch meal. This is what I ate. And then we'll talk a little bit about it. It won't cost you anything to come on the show as long as you're not too bashful. I'll bring you into the stream, and it'll be really easy. And next month, I'll explain just how to do that if you want to join. But it's a lot of fun. So just giving you that opportunity. And if nobody calls in, well, then I'll just come up with something else and fill the time. Don't you worry. But August 10th, please mark your calendars. Some people saying some shout out things. Joyce Hassler, our friend, saying, hey, great show. I agree, Joyce. Thanks so much. Carol says, thanks. It's always fun. I agree. Thank you so much for joining us, Carol. And thank you for everybody joining us. Until the 10th of August. Was it the 10th? Shoot, no, I said that, right? Yeah. Till the 10th of August. I look forward to, I'll be spending some time away, but the Pennsylvania Dutch stuff will keep coming on the YouTube channel. Just check it out. If you haven't subscribed yet, what the heck are you doing? Click that subscribe button. We hit a big milestone. I don't like to brag, but we hit a big milestone this last month since the last time we had a live stream in June. And that is that we got 10,000 subscribers to the YouTube channel. Right now, we're actually over 10,000. I think the last time I checked, it's like at 10,000, closing in on 10,100. When I started all this stuff a couple years ago, and you would have asked me, hey, Doug, you know, one day, do you think you'll ever have 10,000 people subscribe to YouTube channel? I would have laughed you off my front porch. And I am truly grateful for all of the love and support that we've had over these years as we journey on. And I will continue to love and be very thankful of the support that you will continue to give me. But that was a big milestone, and I just wanted to celebrate a little bit, because I never would have expected something like that to happen. And son of a gun, it did. So there you go. Till next month, dear friends, please take care of yourselves. Enjoy the summer. If you're traveling, be safe traveling. Have some fun. Enjoy some Pennsylvania Dutch activities that are going on in and around the community. And until next time, as you know, we always say, Max gut. Max gut zu dir, Max gut zu dir, Max gut zu dir for now. Unsere Zeit ist all und so, es ist mach's gut for now. Hoff wieder mit dir zu sein, hoff du bringst zurück ein Freund. Mach's gut zu dir, mach's gut zu dir, mach's gut zu dir for now. Unsere Zeit ist all und so, es ist mach's gut for now. Hoff wieder mit dir zu sein, hoff du bringst zurück ein Freund. Und so mach's gut, lieber Freund, mach's gut.